Hey man, are you a man? I think I did a video about this a while back, but I think I'm going to do another one just because it's been on the top of my mind today. I was talking with my mom earlier. She came over and we got into discussing, the past and what makes people are the way they are. And basically, we were discussing programming because she was talking about how she doesn't know what to do now. She's at retirement age. And she's like, shouldn't there be a time when people can just relax and chill? And just chill? And I said, no, actually, because I have a different perspective of that now, after listening to, several different philosophies and lecturers, and especially, namely, Manly Hall would talk about how some of the most great works in history have been done by people well over the age of 60, who, after retirement age, decided, wait, I don't want to sit on my ass, and they kept working. Because work is just part of who we are. But it's very difficult for someone to break the program, the paradigm that's been placed upon them by what we call the system. And I'm not putting blame on the system, because ultimately it's the people, the responsibilities that we take. But there is a system in place that tells us to retire at a certain age and to, behave a certain way and perform a certain responsibility in life. And all these things are, mosquitoes are out, all these things are, a little difficult to really buy into. And for a guy like me especially, who doesn't play by the rules. And it brought me to, during the discussion, we started talking about father figures, and I said a lot of, men are supposed to live by a certain standard of men, right? Of course, I'm so beyond that nonsense. I don't believe that a man has anything to do with how strong you are, obviously, or how much money you make. Those are ridiculous notions. But that's the best we had, and, in the 50s, if you were a nice, well-fit guy that was making a lot of money, you were the man. But today, we can look at a man like that really has no values, that maybe is making his money illegitimately, and see that it doesn't matter if he has money. And we can see that muscles, obviously, brains are much superior to brawn in today's world. So things are changing, the paradigm's changing, and the nerds will rule the world, in other words. But I started thinking about what programmed me to become so stubborn. What part of my programming, my neural creations in my life, brought me to be so resistant to I guess I'm resistant to opinions that try to tell me how to live or what to do. When I see folks who are claiming certain lifestyles, I'm always scoffing at it. Like, yeah, right. Like, that's going to work for everyone. Anybody who claims a cure-all or a fix-all for all people, I'm just very skeptical about. Which, of course, with good reason, because they're all full of shit. There is no cure-all for all people. But I realized that a lot of my cynicism and sarcasm is probably derived from the fact that I never really had any idols or father figures. My dad died when I was about 15, so I never really got to know him. And I never got to know the true him. I don't think he ever really had time. But he was a poet, he was an artist, he was into a lot of different, the same things I am, and I believe he was probably a philosopher at heart. But I never really got to know him. One thing I've learned about the past is that you just got to let it go. You can't dwell on like, oh, my dad died when I was 15. It's not a crutch for me because I've just let it go. It's just part of my life, but what's the point in hanging on to it? So, I think that without having that father figure, a lot of people look for other father figures, whether it be a big brother or an idol or something. And while my little brother had me to look up to, I had nobody to look up to, and I never really had any idols. And it's funny to think back to, during that time in the mid-90s, after my father had died, and wondering, what am I supposed to do as far as, being a man? And then that's when I created my own reality. So in a sense, it was a blessing in disguise that I never had any real idols or people to look up to in the meantime, because I feel like maybe my experience would have been tainted by that. And by people telling us what to be and who to be. You know, some of the values my mom taught me, she did her best and taught me many great things about being a good person. You know, work hard, be respectful, be honest, all these things. And I listened. And, but there are many other things that, you know, I probably could have learned if a parent had been more pushing and pressing by saying, no, you need to go to college and you need to get an education doing this and you should be a doctor, and trying to tell their kids who to be and what to be and stuff. And at that point, a father figure becomes an imposing figure. A child who is constantly told by his parents, her parents, what to be and who to be and how to be it, they're the perfect members of society to be molded into clay figurines. But when it comes to raising your kids to think for themselves, it's a little more difficult. So I guess, in short, to sum it up, the way I'm raising my kids and the way that I was raised are similar in regards to quite a bit of freedom to explore and to roam, which leads the child to become a little more abusive towards the parent, short term. But long term, it's you earn a mutual respect. In other words, when I have a 21-year-old son, he's going to be 22 this year. When he was young, we would let things go. We didn't yell or scream or get all mad or punish him. We just had, we shamed him basically, and said we were disappointed. So if the child respects you, and they're shamed for doing something, then they won't want to do it again, and they'll be honest with you. So short term they may be like, screw you, I'm going to take advantage, but long term they want to be your friend. And of course it's about being a parent, not a friend, but you can be both. And so earning respect is something that's important, but I never really had anybody to respect as an elder. I never had a grandpa, and that's kind of what made me realize it, that I didn't even have any grandparents. The only thing there was my mom and I and my brother. My brother left home when he was 15 or whatever, 14, and never really came back. And he's out there, up in Hood River. But, I had to figure things out on my own. And of course my mom did the best she could. No, I'm not getting, that's giving her the short end of the stick by saying that I never had any teaching. Of course she taught me values, like I said, integrity, important things that I remember. But a mom can only teach so many things to her son, because a son has to be a man, but also has to have a feminine side. And I think that being raised by my mom, at least for the last couple of years, and then being exposed to the alternative, I guess you might call it the hippie lifestyle, going out and seeing dead shows in the early 90s and whatnot, I got to see that the feminine side of a man is the most desirable trait to be honest about, because we all have one. But if you try to deny that, that side of you, whatever it may be, you may even just have a funny lisp sometimes, or even just be, a feminine side is a very difficult thing to describe, but we all know what it is. And people will pick at their people for being feminine when they're young kids, but once you grow up, you realize there's the true man. The guy who was made fun of by his peers for being a sissy, called a fag, and he becomes the greatest man of all because he's the one who has had enough adversity and people insulting him to build character. The abuse we take was what builds our character. So losing my father is considered abuse, by the universe to me. I could take it personal, but I don't. I use it as a stepping stone, a lily pad to jump to the next one, to keep going. And think of it like a lily pad, but a heavier one. If you stand in one place too long, it starts to sink. You just got to keep moving. And you go from pad to pad and experience to experience and live life the best we can. So, father figures. It's great if you have one, I know a lot of friends and people I've met and acquaintances who have both their parents still. And they have all kinds of problems with their parents and whatnot, and I say, sometimes I wonder, is it better to have problems with your parents or to have no parents at all, but remember them as great people? And maybe that goes for everything in life. But sometimes the moments that we have in life, it's more important to remember them as great things than to try to dwell on that negative moment. Because if we look back on our lives with anguish or with resentment, it only causes us pain, and it never serves any purpose. So don't beat yourself up over what you haven't done or what you should do. Don't belittle yourself because you have a different approach to life. And if you have no idols, understand that that may be part of why you are the way you are, if you're anything like I am. A little bit outspoken, a little bit arrogant sometimes, especially if people try to tell me how to live. And one thing I've noticed is that I can blow a kid off, some 18-year-old kid trying to tell me how I should live my life. I'm like, I've been there, bro. It has nothing to do with age, but the thought patterns, they're consistent. I'm sorry, no 18-year-old has it figured out, and no 40-year-old like me has it figured out. That's my whole point, is as you go, you learn more and more and more. But not only do I have a problem taking orders or advice from really young kids who are being condescending. See, if they put it in the right context and they're being cool, I can learn a lot from a person. But I find myself standoffish if they're like, oh, you should do this or you shouldn't do that. It's natural. But anyway, I get even worse when it's somebody who's really old. And because I can learn a lot from my elders. When I listen to what they tell me, I've learned so much about what's important and how to be more respectful. But when they come across as dicks, arrogant, rude, as in how a father figure should not act, then I become very dismissive of them. And I guess Trump just came to mind, and I realized this is exactly why I dislike him. I understand people like him because he's loud and he wants to make, he's making all these claims and he's bold and he's out there, but I don't like the way he talks to people. So no matter what you say, no matter how true it is or honest it is, it's not going to do any good if you don't know how to converse and don't have any tact, and he doesn't. And that's the same way I feel about many older men who try to converse. And younger kids are the same way sometimes, but they're too young to know any better, But I've met some really, I don't want you to get me wrong, because I've met some really cool young kids that are fucking damn intelligent, smarter than some of the retired fellas that I've known. And as well, many very smart elderly gentlemen that are, and women, to be fair, men, women, boys and girls, everybody has something to contribute to a conversation as long as they do it tactfully. And if you don't have that, if you have the same father figure complex, then you might understand how it is when somebody tells you this is the truth or this is the fact. You're more likely to say, whatever. Those are my thoughts for the evening. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk